Eurosport Live. With LG Electronics, digitally yours. Now, all revved up for more red-hot motorsport, it's the LG Super Racing Weekend. With
Yokohama, power of performance.
Now on Eurosport, cars you see on the road every day, but you've never seen them go like this. It's the FIA European Touring Car Championship.
With KW, the sports shock absorbers specialist.
Welcome to Anderstorp in Sweden, LG Super Racing Weekend number 5 for 2002, and that means rounds 9 and 10 of the European Touring Car Championship. Well, the Scandinavian Raceway, built in the summer of 1968, while everybody else was having love-ins, the Swedes were converting a marshland into a racetrack. And unfortunately, it wasn't a marshland for nothing. Wet weather has been very much a feature of the weekend and continues to be so. GT race very wet indeed, which doesn't bode well for the touring cars. Well, here we are at Anderstorp, cars coming onto the grid. And as you can see, lots and lots of puddles. One of the features of the racetrack being on marshland is that it does form dips, hollows and ripples, and standing water is very much a feature. There are lots of ponds around the place. Change to the front row of the grid. Nicola Lorini claims pole position on the right there with his lights on for the first time all season. And wipers are on. Wet weather tyres, I'm sure David Leslie is likely to be the call here for all but the brave, or those stuck at the back of the grid with nothing left to risk by taking that change.
It certainly does look wet out there, and with the wipers on, while it's sitting on the grid, you've got to say it is still raining at some point, so I would think, yes, it will be there. The 5-second board's gone out, so the lights will come on. There we are onto the red, waiting for the green, see what the start makes and how the BMWs get away.
Ricard Rydell on the outside of the front row with Giovanardi behind him, but correct, the BMWs are the fast starters. That's Ekblom and Jörg Müller, the two BMWs on row 3 of the grid, already past Giovanardi and Tom Ferrier. Ricard Rydell pulls out of the spray as Lorini gets himself on the outside line in the dirt, but he manages to pick up enough drive onto the runway, and away he's gone. Ricard Rydell holds off the BMWs into the major turn onto the straight there, but it's going to be a real dogfight in the pack in the spray, and Giovanardi is right in the middle of it. This could not have played better for Nicola Lorini if he'd planned it. Tom Ferrier in 6th position there, the third of those Alphas. He started from 3rd on the grid.
You can see just how wet it is there with the spray going along the straight. And when we came onto the straight, they were all together. And at the end of the straight, that Alfa Romeo of Lorini had just stretched its legs, still having so much more power than the rest of the cars at this point in time.
Lorini, Rydell and Fredrik Ekblom, the Swede. Well, you might think he's got local knowledge as we race on board in 4th with Giovanardi, but Ekblom hasn't raced here for years and years. He's been racing in the American Le Mans Series for the last 3 seasons, and that doesn't really give you much of a grounding for coming back to somewhere like Anderstorp, although it has got long straights and bank corners. They don't have anything like this in North America. So Lorini leads, but Rydell refusing to let him get away. He hasn't opened the gap at all on this lap, and I have a feeling, well, certainly there's not going to be any overheating problems for Volvo here. Rydell a little bit surprised and disappointed not to be on pole. And look at the Volvo, David, in the twisty stuff. Lorini hasn't got much to answer that with.
No, the twisted stuff, Rydell is all over him, really making it work, but going around the outside of an Alfa, he knows it doesn't work. He's tried that before, and he's been pushed off the circuit, so he's going to do it the other way around. He'll try the inside and see if he can push the Alfa off, but Alfas are very stern stuff, and they are very quick in a straight line, as I'm sure we'll see when we get back onto the straight and just after this corner.
very strongly built, and we know, oh, as Ekblom goes off, major mistake by Freddie Ekblom, the Swede in the BMW Team Belgium car, drops it off the road, but Rydell on the inside line now to try and keep in the, or out of the spray, but yeah, it looks like he's sort of heating the afterburners there. Nicola Larini, away he goes, up into third place now with no BMW in front of him is Giovanardi, and as we ride with Larini, no, we ride with Rydell in second spot. Larini turns into turn 3, makes a mistake, Rydell neater through there, but Giovanardi under pressure from the BMWs. BMW's very quick in the morning warm-up, David. It was soaking wet there, and they're not at such a power disadvantage when the Alphas can't get the traction from the front-wheel drive in the rain.
Yes, once you get the wet weather, it's more of a level playing field, and the BMWs were all very quick in the morning warm-up. They're not making good use of it during the race, but certainly much more of a level playing field around the twisty bits. But again, the Volvo, you can see around the twisty bits, is very quick, and then suddenly catches up and is all over the back of Larini. And yet when they come to the straight, unfortunately, he just stretches that little red car and it just disappears into the distance.
Racetrack of two distinct halves, though. You've got the main straight, which is Alpha territory, and everywhere else, which seems to be Volvo and BMW territory, or even at least, where the driver can make a difference. And Rydell here coming down to the carousel in the closing stages. They've just come off the straight that used to be the pit straight into this long carousel, which is a big looping 180-degree corner, banked as so many of them are here at Anderstorp. And look at Rydell, really able to hold a tight line. He got inside Larini last lap, so he's still right with him, and into the pits hairpin to come past the start-finish line. And that must be worrying for Larini. He comes off the front straight a long way ahead, but by the end of the lap, nothing to choose between them, and the Volvo is still right with him, so he knows he's got to make a break somewhere.
That's going to be very difficult for him to do. He can make a break on the straights, but every time, or 2 laps we've seen so far, Rydell pulls him back through the twisty bit. But you can see just how wet it is there. To try and stay in the slipstream just gets you no sight at all of what's happening in front of you. The wiper's working very hard, and you can see the water when it hits the screen just running straight off. They use a special solution on those screens to try and get the water off as quickly as possible. Larini, I'm pretty sure in front, will not have his wipers on at all, because having no spray but just the rain coming down, it will run off very quickly.
And the wipers tend to rub the Rain-X off the windscreen, so it gets worse, as you're right. No wiper on there. Still Giovanardi third. Not quite sure where the timing and scoring gets Dirk Muller in third from. Giovanardi is third. It's clearly a red car there, not a white one. But Dirk Muller, Jörg Muller, well, there is one of the BMWs ahead of James Hansen, who's going very well indeed. So I think we'll stick with what we can see, David, rather than what the graphics are showing us, because they have had a propensity for not being as accurate as you might think. Rydell is dropping away a little here from Larini, isn't he? And what are we seeing here? Giovanardi and, oh dear, now that is 43, that's Jörg Muller. So Dirk Muller is the one that still remains. Jörg Muller, will he get himself out of the gravel?
Nope.
No, he doesn't. So there is Larini, our race leader, and Larini knows that this weekend, having started from pole, he really has to do something to try and pull some points back on Giovanardi, and allowing Rickard Rydell to pass him and win the race will not be the something that perhaps he would best want. In the inset there, not what Rydell is seeing in the driver's mirror. That is the view from the outside as we ride on board with Rickard. Now this is the corner where he so needs to be close to Larini to try and just pick up as much of a toe as possible. I wonder how much of a wing the Alphas are having to run to get through the twisty stuff, and how much they're trimmed out for the straight line speed. What would you do if you knew you had a power advantage and you could really maximize it by trimming the car out for this straight? Would you go for that, or would you try and use the wings to balance the dearth perhaps of grip in the tight stuff?
I'd definitely go for the straight line speed on the basis if I was at the front of the straight, then I could keep them back around the twist a bit.
Round 9 of the European Touring Car Championship at Anderstorp in Sweden, and it is wet, wet, wet. Marty Pello would be at home here to bring in an 80s quote. We're on board with Rickard Rydell in second spot. Another car off there in the third corner gravel trap, the North Curve. And as you can see, Larini leading and starting to ease away from Rydell as Giovanardi and Dirk Muller close in behind. Then James Hansen in 5th position, making this an interesting race for the 4,000 Volvo workers, dealers, fans and everybody who have been shipped in from Gothenburg, which is about an hour and a half to the south. Giovanardi, David Leslie all over the back of Rydell now. Looks like Larini is clear away.
Yes, Larini's got himself that lead that he needed, and he'll have a nice cushion. Rydell now has got to concentrate on holding back the cars behind him and drive a more defensive line rather than the line he would probably want to drive. But he's certainly got 2 cars behind him, which is going to give him a lot of hassle. And then just behind that, his teammate James Hansen.
Rather excitingly, leaving that battle for 2nd place to plod around in the midfield with Eric Cairol. A couple of tail-end BMWs behind him. In fact, one BMW change that we should bring you up to date with, Team Great Britain BMW, formerly driven by Gianni Morbidelli, now being driven by not by Tom Coronel, by Duncan Heisman, who, because Giovanardi has spat the dummy and disappeared, as I was going to say Dirk Muller, but it is the 42 car, isn't it? Goes past Giovanardi, and unfortunately then goes mud, rather than gravel trapping, mud crossing, and loses all of that advantage. But it shows that the BMW can get close to the Alfa and give it trouble. I think he's really lost that ground now on Giovanardi there, and probably won't get it back, given the speed of the Alfas along the main straight here.
The big problem now that Rydell has is that if the second Alfa, Giovanardi's Alfa, comes onto that big long straight behind him, he's simply going to cruise past him before he gets to the end of it. So he needs to make sure he has that little bit of a gap coming onto it.
Ooh,
oh, there we see.
There you go.
So I think it's going to happen. And another BMW off on the outside.
Well, I said originally it was Jörg Muller who went off, but in fact it wasn't. It was Dirk Muller who went off there, but now Jörg Muller has gone off. That was Dirk Muller who was chasing Giovanardi, and as we see from Giovanardi now, only Larini in front of him. And that means as he switches the wipers off, he has got the Volvo back down behind him into 3rd place. Now, the question, David, is how much of an advantage has he got? There's Larini, there's Giovanardi, and now Volvo's 3rd and 4th. But the wiper off on Rydell's car as well. It's clearly not as wet as it was. We saw from the main straight a couple of laps ago that the sun, well, the clouds are moving away. The rain is ceasing. And on board with Rickard Rydell, nice sepia tones from the camera, but in front, something he didn't want to see, the 2nd Alfa Romeo of Giovanardi. Now, those of you who didn't watch our qualifying show yesterday, shame on you. There are rule changes in place that will change the balance in this field, probably from the next race weekend at Oschersleben in a fortnight's time. Giving all of the cars the same weight limit, same minimum weight limit, which will make the front-wheel drive cars a little heavier, the rear-wheel drive cars a little lighter. There will also be success ballast added to the top 3 drivers of the weekend on points. They will gain 30, 20 or 10 kilos. Apologies, incidentally, if you're getting some very bizarre sounds. Somebody appears to be queuing up a bit of tape in the OB truck live on air. Nice move. So there will be changes there. There'll also be changes to the engine regs. 4-cylinder engines, and here we're looking at cars like the Alfa Romeo, will be restricted to the 8,500 rev limit they've got at the moment. 5-cylinder engines, and that's the Volvo at the moment, will get another 250 revs to go up to 8,750. 6-cylinder engines, that's like the BMW, will get 9,000 RPM, and that's to try and allow them to breathe a little freer. Multi-cylinders to move the same amount of air as fewer cylindered engines need a few more RPM. And again, I do apologise for the noises on air, not anything David and I can do much about, much as we'd love to go down and kick somebody for it. Unfortunately, can't do that. So the race still being led by Nicola Larini, Fabrizio Giovanardi in 2nd place, and the Volvos 3rd and 4th, Jörg Muller in 5th, Tom Ferrier in the Alfa GB car in 6th position. No, he's not, just been pushed down to 7th place. Ferrier loses that 6th position with a bold overtaking manoeuvre by a BMW. Round 9 of the European Touring Car Championship at Anderstorp, and Volvo's 3rd and 4th. Rickard Rydell leading James Hansen. Well, that means that the Alfa Romeos will start behind them in race 2, and there is still definitely a chance then of a Volvo win here in front of their home fans. And Hansen making a move down the inside of Rydell, locks it up. Oh, James! James, the reason you were catching him in a straight line, you were in the draft, and the reason you got by was because you were on the wet inside line and couldn't get out. Well, he does manage to escape the gravel, but that's a shame. A Volvo 3.4 looking a certainty there behind the Alfa 1.2. But Hansen, David, down the inside, wet and bumpy there, couldn't stop it.
He was well down the inside. He must not much room there, because you could see he was bouncing before he even got towards the corner. He was obviously got two wheels on the inside, and lucky to get all the way through the gravel in order to get onto that little road at the back to come back on somewhat further down the field.
And Ricard must have been saying exactly the same thing as he saw him come past, going, no, 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 and desperately trying to leave him some room without going off himself. Dry line has very much emerged in the closing stage, hasn't it? A very fast drying racetrack, when you consider that it was drizzling at the beginning of the race, and there is now a bone dry line for most of the lap. A bit of breezy, as you can see. The clouds are moving fast across the horizon, but it really has dried out. So Alfa 1.2, Rydell in third, and then is that Ekblom recovering from his earlier incident in fifth place? That might have been him that got past Tom Ferrier. Ferrier then, I would assume, is still in sixth position. We can't see further down the order and wait for the timing and scoring to catch up. But certainly no doubting the race leaders. Nicola Larini in front of teammate Fabrizio Giovanardi, round 9, for only the third time this year. But David, he didn't want Giovanardi to be in second. He wanted Giovanardi to be punted off by somebody and failed to score. So he at least has a noticeable, a measurable pullback. Giovanardi, the points leader, 20 ahead of Larini coming into this race. And Larini will pull, 4 back. I mean, that's nothing. It's a trifle.
When you're considering these two cars have been first and second almost a whole year, then it's very difficult for one to pull points out on the other one. And yes, Larini would have been very much happy if Giovanardi had been off in the gravel or someone had given him a hit or whatever, but unfortunately he's not. So the lead will continue to stay with Giovanardi in the championship, and the Alfa Romeos again finishing, provided get to the end of this race, on a 1-2, as they have done for the majority of the season.
It's got to look pretty likely, but what's happening to Ricard Rydell, third place, under threat? He's got Jörg Muller and Jordi Genet in the BMWs right behind, and it looks, if anything, as though the Volvo is getting slower and slower as the track dries out, David. I wonder if he's using old tyres and just feeling that they're not quite giving him what he needs.
You have to remember that the Volvo's are front-wheel drive and the BMW's rear-wheel drive, so when they first set off on a wet circuit it was fine, but as the circuit dries, the Volvo has to do its braking and is accelerating through the front tyres, where the BMW can do the braking through the front and accelerating through the rear. So it will use its tyres more effectively, and as the race starts to dry like this, then you can see that the BMW will make better use of it towards the end of the race, and that's what's happening. They're starting to close up in the latter stages of the race.
Very good point, well made. I'd completely forgotten, of course, that they are on wet tyres, because it doesn't look like a wet racetrack anymore, does it? So absolutely right. Well, that then obviously shows that not only have they got a strong engine, they've got very good chassis balance in the Alphas, because they are lapping just as quick as ever they were, in fact quicker, and there doesn't seem to be very much giveaway in terms of grip from their two cars. So, I mean, we've known that the Alphas have got strong engines, but they've certainly been very adroit at getting round corners as well, as witnessed the earlier races this season. So Rydell is the struggler at the moment. Jörg Muller, well, Jordi Genet dropping back a little. Tom Ferrier there in sixth place, but not far ahead of James Hansen, who's been in and out of the gravel. Then Peter Cox, Fabrizio Di Simone, Tom Coronel, and the rest. Half a dozen or more cars on the back of the grid for various different reasons. Jens Edman in the Volvo had to change his engine. That automatically puts you back to the end. So did Sandro Sardelli, so did Lewis Villamil. Drive shaft problems in qualifying for Tom Coronel, and he was fastest in the morning warm-up. Third fastest in the morning warm-up, and that's been reflected in the race, David. He has driven his way up through the carnage. I keep wondering if there's actually a dent on the right-hand side door there, the passenger door of Ricard Rydell's car, whether maybe he just got a little tap from James Hansen as he went through. Maybe it's just the concave nature of the door panel, but every time I see it, I keep thinking he's had a little bit of a bash.
I think it was probably a little bit earlier on when he was trying to pass Larini on the first and second lap, when they were side by side, and being as aggressive as ever as the two of them can be when they're trying to get to the front of this race.
Well, into the final hairpin for the last time, Nicola Larini. heading towards the checkered flag for another Nord Auto Team GTA 1-2. And as only the third time this year that Larini has won a race, Giovanardi has won all the others. And Rydell third, BMW's in fourth and fifth place with Jörg Müller in the Schnitzer car, and Jordi Genet, his best result of the year for BMW Team Spain. Tom Ferrier comes home in sixth position. Look at this bundle with James Hansen now on the back of that group. No wonder he couldn't make any further progress past those three BMWs. I bet that was good fun into the corner at the end of the straight. And Tommy Rustad, well, not going very well, I'm afraid, at all in the Nissan. But even in the wet weather conditions, and I think that might possibly be the first time one of the Hondas has made it to the end of the race. Maybe the wet weather has allowed them to favour the car a little bit better. So somewhat muted applause perhaps from the Swedes for a Volvo, for an Alfa 1-2 ahead of the Volvos. But here is the result then, confirmation of that. Giovanardi a second and a half behind Larini, just couldn't close on him at all, could he? Rydell in third, Jörg Müller fourth, Jordi Genet fifth, and Tom Ferrier will start race 2 on pole position, but surrounded by BMWs. And that means that seventh place on the grid will be Di Simone, Peter Cox and Tom Caronel, as well as Ekblom will all start better than James Hansen in 10th place. He will have a tough time in race 2. Well, let's have a look. Is that where the... Yes, that is probably where the door panel got dented there. Rydell at the end of lap 1 trying to make his move on Larini. And Giovanardi showing you how wet it was at the beginning of the race, lest we forget. Dirk Müller going off there in the 43 car. I must reiterate, not Jörg Müller as I first called him. Getting my 42s and 43s mixed up. And James Hansen undoing all the good work of the weekend, I'm afraid, by just spearing off there at almost unadulterated pace to drop himself down the order into 10th place in race 1, and he'll be unlikely to better that in race 2. Dirk Müller's car heading back to the pits for some much needed work. Welcome back to Anderstorp, and what a difference from the beginning of the 9th round of the European Touring Car Championship to the beginning of race 10, just an hour or so later. Starting on a dry track now in the blustery Anderstorp, June afternoon, I guess it is still June. And David Leslie, it looks as though the clouds are coming back for more rain, so race 2 might end wet, which will be fun because I'm sure they will start on slicks. Well, that's how the points are. Nicola Larini winning race 1, closing just 4 points on the series leader, and Larini will have to start in 6th place on the grid, and he will have Giovanardi and most of his main rivals in front of him.
On the long roads, do you think it makes a difference?
Yeah, because first we have the same gearbox, same drive shaft about dry condition, so maybe somebody have changed it for wet condition. So this is the first point. And second point, we have no downforce. If you look, for example, the Volvo in front of me, they have a lot of charge on the back, so this means reduce maybe quite close, so 8 to 12 kilometers less than us.
Nicola Larini, thank you.
Well, interesting, David. Just as we're in the 10-second countdown to a break earlier, I did ask you whether you would trade off grip in the twisty stuff for maximum speed if you were an Alfa driver on the straight, and it sounds like, according to Larini, that's exactly what they've done, whereas he's saying the Volvo in front of him, which is Rydell, has got a big barn door at the back, giving away 14 Ks on the straight, obviously hoping to pull a toe if he needed one, but with much better handling. So it looks like Rydell has gone for the twisty stuff, and the Alfas have gone for the aerodrome straight line speed.
Yeah, but you have to remember the Alfas have actually got the straight line speed to start with, so even if you didn't have the rear wings coming into it, they would be quickest down the straight, so they've used that to their advantage to try and make sure that a little bit quicker, and they can work on the basis that through the twisted stuff they're good enough drivers to keep everyone behind them, and that's exactly what they're going to try and do. They will, with that massive long straight, be able to pull away every time and give themselves some breathing space between there and the rest of the field. And the rest of the field is made up of the two Volvos, Rickard and James Hansen, who unfortunately got very excited in the first race and managed to fall off trying to overtake his teammate. And this massive selection of BMWs, all in white, all causing us great difficulty as to work out which one is which in order to move on from there. And Tom Ferrier,
on pole position.
who started well in the last race, but then slipped back a little bit, and this time is starting on pole position. As you said, the circuit is now dried out, so they'll all be sitting there on slick tyres. Should it rain during this race, that will make the race extremely interesting, because I'm pretty sure the organisers will not automatically throw a flag to say you must come in and change tyres, but leave it down to the best will of what the drivers think, and
yes,
drivers don't always
absolutely
pick the best idea. They seem to think it's better to stay out there and slip around rather than coming in and taking the safe route of putting the
well, the problem
tyres.
is if you go in for a change, then you've lost the race unless everybody else follows suit, and so you basically have to brave it out until it's absolutely inevitable. 3 cars non-starting. The CBME car of Salvatore Tavano, his Honda Civic scratched. He crashed out in race 1. Number 12 car, or we don't have a number 12 car, so we're Chris Goodwin, yes we do. Clutch failure. He had an engine failure in practice in the second RJN Nissan. And we have also lost Jans Edman, the 3rd Volvo, the Flash engineering car. And quite why Flash Nielsen's not driving it himself, I think, is a question that we have raised already and will need to definitely be raised after the weekend. Anyway, let's get back to the grid. Tom Ferrier on pole position for the first time this season. Started at Silverstone on road 2, lost it in Beckett's and Cole tyres on race 1, lap 1, and will definitely be very, very keen not to do that again. Alongside him, Jordi Genet. Now, that could be interesting. Jörg Muller in 3rd, Ricard Rydell, we're here in 4th. The 2 BMWs should be 1st and 2nd onto the main straight, David, given that they are faster starters, even on a drier track, than the Alfa and the Volvo that surround them on row 1 and 2. And then Giovinardi and Larini on row 3 of the grid, as pretty much they almost always are in race 2 of our super racing weekends. But we've seen that on the straight, particularly with the big wing on the Volvo, the big wing on the back of the BMWs, they should be able to pull a big toe off those cars if they're behind them at the start of the straight and use it to their advantage to drive past. So it might be BMWs at the front to start.
Yes, we have to remember that if you've not watched this before, that it's the first 6 are reversed around, which is why we've got Tom Ferrier, who finished 6th in the first race, starting off pole. So it's only the top 6 this year, as opposed to the whole grid last year that was swapped around after the first race.
Which is a shame, because we would have a damn interesting championship if they reversed the entire thing, because the Alphas would have had to start right at the back and would not get 1-2s in every single race. Starting right at the back there, though, is the 43 car. It has been repaired. That's Dirk Muller, and he is 3rd in the championship, or was 3rd in the championship coming in here, and I'm afraid that means that he will probably lose that position to either Jörg Muller or Ricard Rydell, depending on how they fare, because he's not going to score anything from either of these 2 races, is he? Jörg Muller in 4th place, some 12 points behind Dirk Muller, so he needs 2 second places to actually catch him. So no, David's head shaking is correct, his mental arithmetic better than mine. So I'm predicting Genet narrowly holding off Jörg Muller onto the main straight from Ferrier and Rydell, with Giovinardi and Larini behind them. But maybe not, because De Simone and Cox have a chance to get between the row 3 starting Alphas, and it could push them down, as Tom Coronel is a quick starter as well. It could push them down the order, so this might actually be quite a tough race for Larini and Giovinardi. Again, David is shaking his head a little bit. Doesn't work too well on TV, but that's because I'm in full flow and he can't get through. Chris Goodwin there, shown on the back of the grid, but he and Edman will not start, nor will Salvatore Tavano. So around the warm-up lap, well, I tell you what, the Swedish spectators must be as hardy as your normal Silverstone crowd to be standing out there in all weathers as they are. But this is the biggest race weekend they've had in several years at Anderstorp, and very glad they are of it as well. The GT race, of course, 3-hour extravaganza, the double touring car races, and all the other support races as well make it a real red letter day for the Scandinavian circuit. So around they come to the end of the warm-up lap. Tom Ferrier in the Alfa GB car leads them onto the grid for round 10. Cars coming onto the grid for the 10th race in the European Touring Car Championship, the last before the next set of rule changes come through, when we'll see engine regulations change, weight limits change, and driver penalties being applied for success. And Alfa Romeo on pole position, Tom Ferrier, the BMW right behind him though, Jörg Müller looking to make a good start. He's right in a wet patch. Beside him on the grid, Jordi Genet, Ricard Riedel for Volvo in 4th, Alfa Romeo's 5th with Giovanardi and Larini. The countdown to the start begins. 5-second board is given. Red lights go on, revs rise, and a very quick start, very quick change. Ferrier gets a bit of wheel spin, and inside him goes Jörg Müller. So it should be Genet and Müller. Not a great start from Riedel, another front-wheel drive car, but Tom Ferrier around the outside of Jörg Müller, holds on to second on the straight. Here comes Ricard. Jörg Müller held up onto the straight. Now let's see if Ricard can pick the toe up off Ferrier and off the lead car, which is Jordi Genet. Behind them, the Nord Auto Alphas. David, this is great starting.
Absolute fantastic start to the race. They're really close at this point, and everyone's going to try pushing as hard as possible. There's a first two off.
Oh, leaders go off. Dear, oh dear, Tom Ferrier goes off there. So too does Villamil in his Alpha, but Ferrier really suffered in that one. So Riedel leads.
Riedel leads, and they've now got 3 BMWs behind him before you find the 2 Alfa Romeos. So Alfa Romeos will have to work very hard down those long straights in the forthcoming laps to eventually get through and try and get towards Ricard. Ricard's desperately hoping for a win here in his home circuit.
Tommy Rustad in a bunch of... Tenko, oh, he's off backwards. Rustad punted off from behind into a shower of mud by an Alfa. Was that was that Tom Ferrier? It may well have been, recovering from his problem there. I'm not going to say it was definitely, but let's have a look here. There is Rustad wheel to wheel with somebody, gets across the nose of them, and no, it's Villamil, I think. Looks like the Spanish colours on the roof of the Alfa.
We noticed we've lost one of the Alphas, one of the Works Nord Auto cars has disappeared back a bit. So you've got the 3 BMWs, then you've got 1 Alfa, then James Hansen right up behind there. So either Larini or Giovanardi was involved in that, and I'm pretty sure it was one of those 2 cars that turned the Nissan around.
Hansen door banging there with the Alfa. That's great stuff. So what is going on? Well, Ricard Riedel is leading, and the Volvo factory have brought 4,000 people here. Giovanardi in 5th, Hansen in 6th. Good start from 10th on the grid. Jörg Müller, Di Simone, and then Cox. Then Ekblom, Coronel, Cairol, Ruberti, Dirk Müller up to 11th. From 18th on the grid, Jordi Genet right behind him, and well, this is really playing into the hands of Giovanardi. There is Cox, just been passed.
Giovanardi pushing as hard as ever, and there he goes, forcing his way through. That little bit of extra oomph out of the corners gets himself past the BMW.
Oh, and Hansen's off and heavily into the barriers. And that was Eric Cairol in the French BMW, I think, punted him off, French Alfa punted him off from behind. There is Tom Ferrier right at the back. Well, that is a major shunt. Badly wrecked car there. And this might be bad news for Riedel. Yellow flags are out, but will they scramble the safety car to rescue that?
I'm pretty sure they will. This is a big accident. He's come out here. He's got beside a BMW. He's given it a tap. The BMW's come back, tapped the back of him, turned him around. He's gone very hard into that barrier. What makes it even worse is torn the wheel off. You can see it hanging there. The tyre's gone off it, but it's now sitting right on the racing line, and you can't move a car that's only got 3 wheels on it very easily. So I would think very shortly at the race end, the race stewards will be bringing out a safety car to try and recover that car off the racing line.
Well, Giovanardi is struggling in the tight and twisty stuff, no question about it. Just lost that position back again to Peter Cox, so he's back down to 5th place. So, well, Giovanardi can get in front, David, on the fast straight, but he loses that position back again in the twisty stuff, or has lost it back again. This is going to be a tough one. This is absolutely excellent for the championship, with a prospect perhaps of more to come. Again, he breezes past on the straight, but he's on the outside line. Do you think the 2 BMWs are not going to gang up and keep him out there?
I think very much so. They won't gang up on him and leave him hang out to dry on the outside, which is exactly what they did. This is BMWs working together, and there's another one come up just to say hello, we're here, and you can just move back further again.
Well, he was on the outside line, wasn't he? And I imagine probably had to get out of the throttle. Hansen's car is still there. Giovanardi comes back down the inside. But he is in a tough race. So too here is Eric Cairol in the middle of the pack. Cairol, long-time BMW stalwart in a privateer Alpha. And did Giovanardi get the place back? Let's count the BMs in front. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. So, in fact, he's going backwards. Oh, if only Larini had managed to stay on, he might have done himself some good in this race.
I still can't quite understand. We've seen the cars coming around that fast corner where James Hansen went off, and the car's still sitting there in the middle of the circuit. Why they haven't got the pace car out already, I'm not too sure. Really, as a matter of safety, that should be out there by now.
Apologies for the lack of timing and scoring. That's one of those I don't know why it's happening things. Giovanardi again into the pits hairpin, trying to make up a place, but he is struggling. So Rydell leading and praying, I'm sure, that the safety car doesn't come out. I wonder if that third Alpha in the queue here is Nicola Larini. Oh, and whoever it is, he's not appeared. Larini was making a move, and he's made a mistake. So let's have a look. Jörg Müller is in second place, Ekblom in third, with Di Simone, Giovanardi, Coronel and Cox. And then Cairol is the next one up in that one. But this is the hardest that we have seen Giovanardi work for anything all year. And I'm very glad to see it, I have to say. No disrespect and certainly no axe to grind against Giovanardi, but it does make the championship a touch more interesting.
But you can see now, at the end of that long straight, he's managed to cruise past those BMWs and get himself in front. So unless he makes a mistake and lets one of them back through at all, he's used his power to his advantage and got in front of them. So he's now got three behind him and a space in front of him in order to catch the next one. So if he can stay there during this lap, and then when he gets in the straight the next time, I'm sure he'll catch the BMW in front of him.
My feeling is that he has an advantage because Di Simone is not the quickest of those three BMWs either. I would have thought that Cox and Coronel would probably both have a better chance. Certainly they were much quicker in the warm-up than Fabrizio Di Simone.
And Simone making a mistake, going a little bit wide, and I think that was Cox just disappearing down the inside.
Well, that's probably good news. And, blimey, they're coming out with all sorts of new graphics this weekend. Those three BMWs continue, and there are two Alphas further back. I know that the first of them is Eric Cairol, but, well, I'm sure we saw Nicola Larini trying to make a move, and there again, out of the final hairpin, you see the Alpha there weaving on the straight. And that, I'm sure, was because there had been an attempt at a passing manoeuvre. There is Cairol, he's the next one up behind the three BMs. So we've got... no, I'm trying to work out exactly who we have got. I think that's Di Simone still in front. Here's Cairol behind the three of them anyway. So it is Di Simone and then Coronel and then Cox. No, see, that's not Larini, that's Cairol. Quite clearly, because we can see from his onboard camera he's behind this bunch. So I'm afraid that timing and scoring is serving only to annoy, confound and confuse me, which I really don't need, as regular viewers will notice. What are you pointing to the top of the screen for, David?
One of the Alfa Romeos for some reason suddenly slowed down and pulled out, so whether it's Cairol or Larini, we're not too sure, but certainly one of them is disappearing off.
No, I think that's Cairol still there behind this trio of BMWs. Don't forget James Hansen was further back. He's been off into that really muddy outfield at the end of the main straight. Maybe the engine ate something it didn't like. So 6, let's get this right, is Di Simone. 7 is Tom Coronel. And that makes Peter Cox the next one up, I guess, ahead of Eric Cairol. So Giovanardi is gone, and that means that Jörg Müller in second place, well, maybe under pressure here from the Alpha fairly soon. Oh, is that Larini? No, I think it is Larini. I think you're right, actually, and I'm
sure it was Cairol who pulled over, and Larini has moved off.
It is Larini, so we'll give that, well, we'll call timing and scoring correct. After all, it is digital transponders, and I'm just a fool looking at a TV screen, so it is Larini, but unable to get in any way on terms with these BMWs. So, well, Ed Blom's still in third. Well, we haven't seen him for a while. Cox, Larini, then Dirk Muller, and then Genet, and then Heisman, Villamil. So yeah, it was Carroll then who peeled off the back of that, slowing down.
But this is a real good battle with two BMWs, an Alfa stuck in the middle, and with Larini and another two BMWs behind. So they're getting well sandwiched in here. I think BMW using their might and their numbers to be able to try and do their best to hold the Alfas back as far as possible. While up front we can now see Rickard Rydell trying to stretch his lead as much as possible over the he's Di Simone, who's up in
Jörg Muller in second place,
who's in second place, trying to stretch that lead and try and be out there to win. To win in front of his home crowd would be absolutely fantastic. They've got these 4,000 staff here this weekend to try and watch the Volvo do well, and leading this race, you can't do any better than this.
Also saw a sea of red caps in the grandstand, so clearly Alfa Romeo Sweden have brought an awful number of people along. But yeah, the Gothenburg Volvo factory, Volvo's main factory, is just about an hour and a half down the road from here, and Rickard Rydell certainly very much the focus of most attention here. So fourth place at the moment for Giovinardi. Fifth place now, just one BMW ahead of Larini, and that is the number 6 car of Fabrizio Di Simone. So Larini is slowly but surely working his way up the order. In the end, speed will out on this main straight. Fully a third of the length of the lap, I would have thought, was this main straight, which is the main runway of the local airport. And again, well, it's the traditional Alfa Romeo story. He just drives by in a straight line. And David, I'm not sure whether taking 15 kilos off and adding 500 RPM is going to make too much of a difference to the difference between the Alfas and the BMWs in terms of power at the moment.
Certainly not 15 kilos will make a difference. At the moment, and as we look at this race, the BMW is 30 kilos heavier than what the Alfa Romeo is, so they will be equal when we get to the next race. But even that isn't going to make the difference that Alfa Romeo have down the straight. Their extra power that they have and that speed down the straight with the low drag car is just making life very easy, or much easier for them in this race than it is for anybody else.
And of course they will have gambled on the fact, or based their setup on the fact, that they're quick in the straight line, so why not be quicker? Plus also BMWs will have had to have tailored their cars for the twisty stuff, which means more aero, bigger wings, which means a bigger hole in the air. So if you get stuck behind a BMW with a low downforce Alfa, you actually get a much better tow than you would normally. So being behind, he has used that tow to get by, and now he's clear. He is driving away because he's not being held up in the battle. Jörg Muller is closing down Rickard Rydell. Fredrik Ekblom still third place. Then Giovinardi and Larini. So this weekend not panning out as great as either Alfa driver would have liked. At the moment, Giovinardi and Larini will come out with, you know, a 1 or maybe 2 point closer margin to points leader Giovinardi, unless Gio's car blows in some way. But 7 laps in, Rydell leading still by nearly a second from Jörg Muller, and there's not much to choose between them. I'll be very surprised indeed if Rydell gives this race win away. He's been desperate all year to put one over on Alfa Romeo, and where better than at a Swedish track in a Swedish car. Rickard Rydell leading round 10 of the European Touring Car Championship, and David Leslie, definite signs that in the 10th race of the season an Alfa Romeo might not win for the first time all year.
Yes, it's looking very much that way. They certainly did have a very hard time beginning of this race. They were boxed in by the BMWs, and BMWs did everything they possibly could to make sure they stayed as far back as possible for as long as possible, and that certainly has hurt them. They're now through, and they're up to 4th and 5th. But they've never been off the podium. They've always been up there on the podium at some point. There's always been an Alfa Romeo there. At this moment in time, he's looking that not quite they're going to be there this time. Giovinardi, having got himself through to 4th, seems to have got himself stuck there, not actually catching Ekblom, who's sitting there in 3rd place at the moment.
And the only real change is that Larini is reeling in Giovinardi fractionally. But behind the 2 Alfas, here's this 6-car BMW battle. This is a one-make championship going past you right there. 6 of them before you get Tom Ferrier and Lewis Villamil in the 2 privateer Alfas. And out front, well, Rydell is definitely pushing the Volvo with everything that he's got and every ounce of performance he can find in it to stay ahead of Jörg Müller. And Jörg Müller having a very strong race here as well. Fredrik Ekblom, of course, so 2 Swedes in the top 3, and then Giovanardi and Larini. But I don't think, unless Ekblom or one of the other 2 leaders throws the car off the circuit, I do not think for the first time all year, as you say correctly, there will be an Alfa on the podium. And we have had an Alfa win every single race, and in most, I think in 8 cases, they've been 1-2. So it has been, yeah, just 2 races where there has not been an Alfa in second place, and both of those were Dirk Muller's BMW, second places. And even in that instance, Larini was in 3rd place in both those races. So they have had 2 of the 3 podium spots, and it's normally been a 1-2, depending on who won. Obviously, normally Giovanardi. So for Rickard Rydell, well, his best so far has, he hasn't finished on the podium yet, so, or has he? Rydell, no, he hasn't. Oh, yes, he has, won 3rd place at Silverstone in the 2nd race. And so this will certainly be a major bonus for him if he can pull off this victory. And although Jörg Müller is getting a little closer, time is really very much against the German driver, I think.
Yeah, Rickard's out there, be working as hard as ever. He knows what it takes. He's won many races before, including championships in the touring cars. So he'll be pushing as hard as he can. He knows he's got a small lead over Jörg Müller, and he'll just be trying to keep that lead and trying not to make a mistake, pushing as hard as he can all the time, just to keep that gap there. The last thing he wants to do is make a mistake and have Jörg right on his bumper, but then he'll end up driving defensively and he'll end up with 2 BMWs on his bumper. So he'll be working very hard just to keep that. He's got the experience, he can do it, he knows he can do it, and in front of his home crowd to have the first win of the year for Volvo, that will be in the back of his mind, and he'll be working very hard to make sure that he can walk away with 4,000 very happy Volvo employees.
Right ahead of this BMW battle, although you're not seeing it now, the Alfas are nose to tail. In fact, I think Larini may possibly have just passed Giovanardi. And yeah, the one-make BMW challenge is getting, it's like the county challenge of the 80s, isn't it? Door-to-door wheel-banging action. Dirk Müller in the middle of that, right now behind the 9 car of Peter Cox. But the Alfas are what we want to see, because that may make a more significant change to the championship, and David will have to do hasty points calculating or points recalculating. There is Jordi Genet, who starts on the outside, the front row of the grid. He's a long way back, isn't he? But then what will be interesting is maybe in a couple of races' time to see these 5 or 6 BMWs, who are clearly very close in terms of performance, actually mixing it with the front-running cars, the Alfas and the Volvo at the front of the field, because the Schnitzer car can do it at the moment in terms of pace, as Jörg Müller shows, closing into less than half a second now behind Rickard Rydell. And Fredrik Ekblom in 3rd place, not losing ground either. Let's have a look. Let's keep the camera shot for the Alfas, please. No, we don't, but they are further apart now. So Ekblom racing in the Singleton BMW Team Belgium entry, despite being a Swede. All sorts of strange politics. The local manufacturers like BMW Great Britain, or local importers rather, entering cars, but BMW with drivers to place in them. Sort of deciding the driver lineup. So Giovanardi behind an Alfa, David. So yes, they did change place at this corner last lap.
Giovanardi is trying very hard to get past his teammate Larini, but as you see at the end of the straight, he made a bit of a mistake, caught the curb on the inside, went over the curb on the outside and lost a bit of time. So unfortunately Giovanardi is now
back down to
dropped back down. Yes.
Yeah. So Larini caught him, drove past him as if he was a BMW. Well, he actually had to pass him mid-corner, but he still got by him. And so I wonder if Giovanardi is nursing some sort of problem with the car, as Rydell leads narrowly into the closing stages from the BMW. Not long to go for Rickard Rydell, and certainty, I think, of a non-Alfa victory here in Anderstorp. But will it be the Swede in the Volvo, or will it be the German in the BMW? Well, sort of shades of the World Cup final here, but not quite, no Brazilians involved. Rickard Rydell now across the line with Jörg Müller right behind him. And although Rydell has come close to winning races so far, he's had a better season than Jörg Müller has. And I tell you what, Jörg Müller will certainly grab any remote opportunity of passing Rydell to win this with both hands and not look back, because he is desperate for a win. Jordi Genet is off in the number 6 car, started on the outside. In fact, that is Fabrizio Di Simone. And the BMW, very good under braking. Don't forget the Volvo, front-wheel drive, trying to brake, turn and put the power down with the same set of wheels. BMW with slightly better chassis balance, just steering with the front and powering away with the rear wheels. And Müller, very close indeed. We could see a change in the leadership before the end of the lap. He'll have to work hard to get around Rydell. Rydell will make the Volvo as wide as it is long, and Müller will not take this win easily, but he might take it nonetheless. Closing in from behind, and look how much is Fredrik Ekblom, which shows that Rydell is slowing and coming back towards the BMWs, and that worryingly means he might be coming back towards Larini as well.
I think because you've now got Müller right on his tail, he's driving very much more a defensive line rather than the quickest possible line out there. We've seen that coming into one of the earlier corners, and that just does slow the thing down. But they are pushing as hard as they can with the tyres. Remember, they're now a fair distance into this race, and the tyres are starting to lose their grip compared to what they had at the beginning of the race. So it'll be covering every corner when the car's right behind you. If you've got a little bit of a gap at all, you'll take the racing line and try and stretch that away, which seems to have happened just at the end of this lap. But certainly after the long straight, that first section after that, the BMW was very much trying to get past Ricard. As they come on, Ricard seems to get round the first corner that little bit better, and just opens up a little bit of a gap as they come down the straight, so the BMW hasn't got as good a tow as it possibly could have.
But then we heard Larini saying before the race what big wings the Volvo is carrying, which does help the BMW. And here at the end of the straight at peak revs, again around the outside, Jörg Müller, he knows he'll have to go around there, but he's still going to give it a try every single lap. No point not. And that's his last opportunity. Now, Rydell, it seemed to me on the last lap, was really struggling very badly with understeer, and the next 2 corners might decide it.
This time he was, last lap round there, he was giving it, trying to keep him back. Muller's pushing him now, actually running into the back of him. And these sort of things are not too bad as long as they're not gentle. They don't actually knock somebody off the circuit and then take the place away from them. But, oh, down the inside, there it goes.
There's the understeer that killed him, and Ricard Rydell loses the race on the final lap. Dear, oh dear, yes, Jörg Müller so quickly behind him into Opel earlier on, into that right-hander, that he was bumping him up the bit behind. Now into the carousel, the last major corner here, and Ricard Rydell just could not hold it on the line, David, and the BMW pointing in with the front end and using the power to dive in underneath. It'll be the first win of the year for anything other than an Alfa Romeo, and there will, as he predicted, not be an Alfa on the podium. Jörg Müller wins as the Schnitzer mechanics go mental. Second place for Rydell. He'll be bitterly disappointed with that. Third place right behind him for Fredrik Ekblom. Larini in 4th. 5th place for Giovanardi, and then 6th place every other BMW in the field rushing to the line. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th for BMW. 10th place Tom Ferrier in the Alfa GB car. Had a battle all the way there for 11th and 12th to the line as well between the 2 Spaniards, with Genet in the BMW holding off Villamil in the Volvo. But that is cruel indeed for Rydell. He knew that the writing was on the wall, but just 1 lap less, he could have held off Jörg Müller.
Yes, he will be very disappointed knowing that they had so many people there watching Volvo just not far from their own home factory. But nevertheless, a second is still his best result of the year, and he should be very pleased with that indeed.
Well, you would be if he'd come up to second, but you can't be if you go back to second. But Jörg Müller, though, well, that will certainly light a fire under him. Don't forget, in a fortnight's time, they go to Germany, to Oschersleben, and with new weight rules and weight restrictions, that will be a very different look to the BMW field. But disappointingly now for Jörg Müller, having won his first race, the top 3 point-scoring drivers from this weekend will race with an extra 30 kilos, 20 kilos, and then 10 kilos of ballast for next time out. And Jörg Müller might find that he is one of them. I think Rickard Rydell almost certainly will. Well, that is the touring car race here. Join us for more in just a second. So here is Jörg Müller being beaten around the head by Dirk Müller, winner of round 10 of the European Touring Car Championship, and he will then, I'm sure, have a great possibility of a success ballast on his car
Jörg
next
Müller,
time
many
out.
congratulations. It was a war between BMW and Volvo, and the last lap you won.
Yeah, I think Rickard got a little bit of problems with his tires. My car was very nice. We really changed something after warm-up again on the setup. And we were driving on a dry setup even in the rain, so I think this was our little thing which brought us a victory, and I'm very happy. Now I can look for the championship as well if we get something positive for the next race, so I really look forward for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So Jörg Müller, good to see him smiling again. Excellent stuff, and little message for the folks back home for him. Now, as I was watching the graphics, I sort of missed how the Alphas finished, but David's saying that Giovinazzi finished ahead of Larini, which was certainly not the way they were when they started the final lap. So are we seeing Alfa Romeo enforcing Ferrari-style team orders to make sure that Giovinazzi gets maximum points, and is Larini now on only race 5 of the 10, or race 10 of the 20 race championship, being forced to play second fiddle? Giovinazzi on 80 points and Larini on 65. Jörg Müller now tied with Dirk in third equal. Rydell on 24 points in fifth. Frederik Ekblom moves up to 6th position, ahead of James Hansen now with 9 points. Hansen not scoring in either race there. So Rickard Rydell will be disappointed, I'm sure. Let's catch up with him right now, though.
Rickard Rydell, you lost the lead on the last lap, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's very disappointing, of course, having been leading the race almost the whole race, and they were a little bit quicker at the end. He's also a bit faster on the straight, so it's difficult to keep them behind when they're actually approaching. I did it for a few laps, but...
Do you think it was a problem of tires?
Not really, no. They worked fine. Overall, of course, I'm disappointed, but from fourth on the grid to finishing a third and a second is quite good.
Thank you very much, Rickard Rydell.
Well, it would have been a nice little storybook for the Volvo fans to come here and see the first non-Alfa win being a Volvo, but as you see, they are all heading off in their droves to fight the traffic all the way back to Malmo, Gothenburg or Stockholm, wherever it is they have come from. So, Tommy Rustad's car looking fairly second-hand, not half as second-hand as James Hansen's though. There was a fair amount of carnage there. But interesting, David, that we heard Larini saying he thought a number of the teams would be racing on dry setups in race 1, which is why they came better towards the end of it. And that's exactly what Jörg Müller was saying. That's why the BMWs looked so strong at the end of race 1, and that helped put them in a potential winning position for race 2.
Yeah, it certainly did help them. It's a very good idea to stay on dry settings if you've got any thought at all that the circuit could dry during the race, and that's exactly what happened in that first race. We could see the dry line coming very quickly indeed, and then start of the second race it was a completely dry circuit with the odd little puddle here and there on certainly the dips, but other than that it was an interesting race to say the least.
Well, and a very good change for the championship. Race 1, Alfa Romeo 1-2, Larini in front of Giovinazzi, but race 2, BMW, Volvo and BMW on the podium. A wind of change? We'll find out at Oschersleben. So that rounds up round 9 and 10 of the European Touring Car Championship. But don't forget that this evening on Eurosport, we will be seeing the FIA GT race. And believe me, wet weather has an awful lot to play in the outcome of the 3-hour GT counter. So tonight at 6:30 on British Eurosport, 19:30 across Europe. It started behind the safety car under leaden skies and in the middle of a deluge. What happened after that? No, I'm not telling. You'll have to come and join us tonight, 6:30 on British Eurosport, as we start our evening of motorsport. And don't forget, the Winston Cup cars around Sears Point after that, with a last lap drama to look forward to. We'll see you at 6:30. Till then, bye-bye.
With LG Electronics, digitally yours.